contrast to financial data, health data are now also considered an asset class. But in contrast to financial data, we are all billionaires when it comes to health data, because we all have 6 billion base pairs and we all have the same blood markers, etc. So it's actually, and every data set is important if we can use it in the right way. And this brings us to the last presentation of this first part, and this is given by Effy Vayena. Effy Vayena is a researcher at the Biomedical Ethics Institute of the University of Zurich, and we have been working together for about 2 years, and it has been a very fruitful collaboration. Me as a geneticist talking to anestheticists and so on, I have made a lot of headways in understanding the issues, and she's going to convince you that the issues are manifold, but the future is bright, with the title of Citizens Connect and Conquer, Citizens, P4 Medicine and Ethics. Effy, it's a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. So for this last session, I will talk about one issue which I think is going to be very critical in shaping the future of health. And a lot of people already, the previous speakers, alluded somewhat to that, not only to the ethics, which is going to be important, but starting a little bit earlier to the involvement of the citizens in how research is happening today. So this is a gaming website. People go on it, maybe you've heard of it, and they play a puzzle-like game, but it has a lofty purpose. It helps fold proteins. And what happened with one of their recent games, they managed to unravel an AIDS-related enzyme which had baffled scientists for a decade. They managed to do that in 3 weeks. That's quite fast. And they published the result in a Nature journal, and I don't know if you can see on the slide, but they're actually co-listed, they're listed as co-authors. This is an example of what is called crowdsourced research or citizen science. And it's not just one example out there. There are several similar examples that may differ in the objective and scope or the degree of participation. And I put up here various terms of how we know such initiatives, because there are so many, and I put them on that tree of research. So they're interesting leaves, and they're called democratic science, because we've got all these people contributing, patient-driven research, specifically for patients being involved, participatory research, crowdsourcing, or the bottom-up research approach, which is maybe a much more encompassing term. Now, no matter what you call these kind of initiatives, they have one distinctive feature in common, and that is that ordinary citizens are involved in the initiation, in the control and ownership of the research process and the research outcome. What has enabled people to do this kind of thing? Perhaps the answer pops up to your mind very quickly, because these are people connect like that online. So the internet has been a catalyst in enabling communities to form in that way. Internet access, mobile devices, applications has allowed people to connect and to create communities and networks of shared interest. The applications have also enabled people to generate data, and we already talked today about some of the data that's generated. Data, health data, that not only have personal use, but in aggregated forms, they can be very valuable to research. Here's an example. The patients like me, Jane already mentioned them, but here's what they do. Patients are going online here in those communities. They have, as you can see, perhaps over 1,000 conditions. So they go into the condition they have in that group. They go there to ask to actually find support and advice for what they have. But what at the same time they're doing is they're reporting very detailed accounts of their condition, of the medication they're taking, of their symptoms and side effects. And it's sort of a diary that is out there. It's a real-time thing. And it's used, of course, all this aggregated data can be used for research. It's a very valuable source. The company who is having this, the company of Patients Like Me, has and is using the data for research. But another initiative which was very interesting here is it wasn't just the company doing the research. Some of the people, some of the patients that they were there, patients suffering from Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS patients, decided to do a clinical trial on themselves. And decided to do a clinical trial not with an over-the-counter vitamin supplement, but with lithium. So they did the trial, results were published in a leading scientific journal, and I will come back to that. But as you can see, this is a very different kind of thing than what we know of. We used to, in the biomedical research, and I'm sure you're all involved in some way, we had the top-down approach, and we wouldn't have clinical trials popping up in various settings. So what we're seeing here are two things. One is that people seem to be eager to connect, and that may be no surprise because humans may like to connect. But perhaps more interesting is that we do see some willingness for people to participate in research. Again, those of you who've been involved with clinical research, you know that one of our problems has been participation and recruiting people and retaining recruitment for longitudinal studies. So what is here which is different? And surely internet and online platforms is one thing. Another thing that I think might be, it's important to consider is that with technologies, and we heard about the dropping costs of sequencing, for example, there's an industry which has emerged and allows people more direct access to health information. This is another company that was mentioned again, perhaps more known than others, sells directly to consumers their genetic information. And again, collects the data and does research. Of course, participants will be asked to provide their phenotypic information or medical information or to allow that research to happen. Now, surely those new platforms are very appealing to people. The internet enables them, and direct access is playing a role. But perhaps another question to ask is what is actually motivating them to do that and to participate or go there and share their data as the Patients Like Me communities do? And if you look at the slide, you might get the first clue, passionate curiosity. So maybe people are passionately curious about stuff, so they're going into those sites, contributing data, and share. But I think there might be, and we've identified more reasons than that. For example, the fact that through these processes, people tend to have more control over what's happening with their health data. And that's something appealing. Also because people in those kinds of interfaces and platforms, they have fun. The folded people were playing a game. And finally, and that's very important, I think, because there is appealing to people to contribute to something which is socially valued, to the social good. So there is a sense of altruism in participating in this kind of research. And it might be a combination of those motives and not just one, or perhaps others that we haven't yet identified. But what's perhaps more important to focus on, even the motives, or the motives we need to understand quite well, is that these kinds of initiatives are very powerful, and they're powerful in helping us conquering medical challenges. These are just two examples of scientific contributions that they have resulted for such type of initiatives. The first is a contribution to the Parkinson's disease from the 23andMe community company. Now, I didn't mention that 23andMe claims to have the largest cohort of patients, of Parkinson's patients in the world. That's a very interesting thing, perhaps, to note. So that's one of the contributions they made. And the bottom of the slide is the paper that was published based on those people, on patients like me, who did the clinical trial on themselves using lithium. And what you see here on the title, which I think is, again, quite notable, is the accelerated clinical discovery. So speed and doing things much faster comes into play. So we've got these initiatives going on everywhere, the leaves on the tree. We're seeing that these kind of initiatives have already demonstrated potential, and that's very important, I think, to make sure that we harness that potential, we harness this energy and willingness, and foster it further. That fits actually quite well with our vision about medicine, a medicine which will not any longer be more reactive to symptoms and diseases, but proactive to perhaps allowing us to avoid this altogether. And as you see in the P4 medicine, participation is critically important. It's one of the important aspects. Participation of a wide participation of people who will become part of the research enterprise, who will contribute data, share, and therefore will allow us to derive knowledge that allows medicine to become predictive, preventive, and personalized. So in the remaining few minutes, I will just share with you a few thoughts about what I think will be important in harnessing that potential. And I think what will be important is to ensure that we have a conducive environment. It was mentioned earlier today that we'll have many stakeholders into that whole research enterprise, and we have many stakeholders into how the future of health is going to be shaped. So I think the environment, that we have all a responsibility in producing that conducive environment, and in the heart of it, I think we need to put trust. It has to be an environment that those who are participating into that and those who are getting the results are trusting. Now, trust is a preoccupation of our society. We keep talking about it, but I don't think we've done a great job in achieving that, partly also because it's not an easy thing to do. And in the case of the bottom-up approach to research, I don't think it's going to be particularly easy. We're again having a diffused, open-ended community of people. But perhaps one way to help us create that conducive environment with trust in its heart will be to rely heavily on some important values. And I will only refer here to some, because in the interest of time, because there are many more. So transparency will be critically important in how these initiatives are happening and what is going on in this research enterprise, about the objectives, the knowledge, the financial gain that it's produced, the responsibility, the allocation of responsibilities, the decision-making. And transparency will be important within those initiatives and to the outside world. Reciprocity is another important value that I think we'll have to make sure that is nurtured in this endeavor. Reciprocity is about matching burdens to expected benefits. And the people who are coming in, these ordinary citizens, these big numbers of people who will be coming into research enterprises, they incur costs and burdens. So in terms of effort, of time, in taking the risk of disclosing personal health information. So these have to be rewarded appropriately. And for example, people who might feel exploited if they're unable to share results from a research to which they contributed. Similarly, I think if people come into this project, in this kind of initiatives because of altruistic purposes, because their main thing is contributing to the social good, they might be feeling let down if financial gain trumps the expected social good. So we'll have to be very careful with reciprocity. And last but far from least, and Jane already alluded to that earlier, is that we have to make sure that in this environment, again, belongs respecting individual rights. Jane's example about this new dynamic model of consent is exactly trying to do that, to respect the autonomy, self-determination of people. But consent alone is not going to suffice. We'll have to respect other individual rights. And for example, privacy, which I think it's a complex issue, will also be critically important. And just one word on privacy. Sometimes people who talk about the bottom-up approach to research, they seem to think to kind of send the message that privacy, the notion of privacy in our online world has been diluted and it doesn't exercise people the way it used to. But in a way, if in the heart of the bottom-up approach to research is that people have control over their health data, control over how this kind of data are going to be used, privacy is precisely allowing them to do that, to have that kind of control. So in a way, privacy is another side of self-determination, and I think we shouldn't have to choose between the two. Now, last, and I'll close with that, and I'll bring back the tree of research with its peculiar leaves. I think what will be important in fostering those initiatives which have already demonstrated that could be critically important, and how we can, I think, maintain the momentum that I think it's building up, it will be to make sure that we connect these research initiatives with these important values. It's not an easy task, but I think we have to be very aware, and I think we have to be doing this from the beginning. So I'm very happy to be working with Ernst and others who are now doing that. These kind of values have to be infused into the process from the very beginning, and not later on after some scandal or after something has gone really wrong. And the worry is if we fail to do that, instead of harnessing this immense opportunity, we might be witnessing a massively missed opportunity to form the future of health in a very positive way. Thank you.